Tracing Your Family Roots. I'm Arline Sachs, back after a long time. And this is Chuck Mason, who's here all the time. And we've just completed a show, so this is part 2 of a show talking about what a professional genealogist does and really how to prepare and do your genealogy. So it's not only for professional genealogists, but it's for everybody to learn
Right.
a little bit more about what they're doing. So we're in part 2 now. And what would you say is one of the most important things you have to do?
One of the most important things that you have to do is cite the source when you find it.
Absolutely.
Back in 1989, I took a 10-week course through Fairfax County Adult Ed, and 8 weeks was in the classroom. The other 2 weeks were trips to the National Archives and the Library of Congress. And during that entire 8 weeks, I never heard anything about citing my sources. I learned the hard way. The way I learned was I did one of the things that the teacher told us: go to historical and genealogical libraries in the area where your ancestors lived. And I found in the Gloucester County Historical Society a book on cemetery transcriptions for a cemetery where my great-grandparents, second great-grandparents, and third great-grandparents were buried down in Atlantic County, New Jersey. And I looked through the book and I made a note of the pages that I found people I knew, and I wanted copies of those pages. And then I took them over to the man who would do the copying, because they had a whiz-bang copier, so the general public couldn't use it. And so one of the things he asked me was, did I want a copy of the title page? And I thought, what do I want the title page for? My ancestors aren't on it. So he made the copies, and I went home and I used the information, and I thought, there's got to be other people in that book that I want to find. So I went back for once a month for 6 months looking for the book. Well, I remembered it as being about an inch thick and with a bright orange cover on it. And when I went back, I went over to where the books were, and they weren't there anymore. They had added in that 4 or 5 week time between when I was there and when I went back more bookshelves, and they moved the collection. Well, there were 15 books with an orange cover on it. And I went through every one of them and didn't find what I was looking for. And I was convinced they had lost the book somehow in moving them around. Finally, about 6 months down the road, I went in and I looked. I didn't find any more, but I happened to pull another book off the shelf, opened it up, and there was the book I was looking for. It was a black cover and about a half an inch thick. And I was 30 years younger then. So I learned then you want to make sure that you cite the source that you used so you can go back and find it. And there are all kinds of guides to doing this. And I have students ask me, well, what's the best one, or pick a guide. And I usually steer them toward Elizabeth Mill's Original Evidence, which is a black and white cover. It's long out of print, but it gives good basic information. And no matter what samples you use, there's going to be information that's going to be unique to that source. So put that in too. I always say err on having too much information rather than too little. As long as you or somebody else can go and find that, I don't worry about, is everything in order? Are all the commas and periods in there where the guides say? The important thing is, can you go and find that? And can you go find what I have used that you want to look at?
Well, sometimes it doesn't work anymore because I did a lot of research at Family Search, and I have the very nice, the microfilm number. Well, they don't use microfilm
numbers
anymore.
now.
And if you put it in, then you come up with all sorts of different names that
Yes.
that you don't want. So
Well, and
things change.
and another thing that I find, some of these online sources have a source citation that is not helpful. I was talking to, she's now retired, somebody down at the National Archives, and she was not happy with a major provider of genealogical information online because if people came in with the source citation that they attached to it, the staff couldn't find what they were looking for because it didn't have enough detail in it. So, you know, you want to put anything that you need in there detail-wise. So I guess the next thing that we want to talk about, tip number 10, has to do with what is important in becoming a good genealogist. And my thing is attend genealogical conferences,
you learn
classes.
so much at the
read,
conferences.
You know, any book that you can read, anything at all, because when I, as we talked about in the last show, I was a certified genealogist for 20 years. When I was working on becoming certified, there was no prescribed education program. They recommended that you attend classes and conferences and things like that and read, but there was nothing, you have to do this, this, and this, and check marks off. So part of it was because a lot of the things were related to the area you were going to specialize in. It might be a state or a group of states or a country or a group of countries or a group of states or a particular topic. But so you kind of had to be self-educated. And I found I had already been attending as many national conferences as I could. I also attended the Fairfax Genealogical Society's conference, which...
Well, I remember one time on a show quite a few years ago already, you were giving a talk in Philadelphia, I think.
Yes.
And you said you were going up there just to give the talk, and then you were surprised at how many things that you really had to know.
Well, and part of it was the National Jewish or International
IAJGS, International
Jewish
Association
Conference, and
Jewish Genealogy.
I, with your and Sid's encouragement, applied and was accepted to speak, and I think I did 3 lectures. But I thought, okay, a lot of the things are probably going to be related to Jewish research. So I figured I might go a day or two. Well, I ended up going every day that I was up there because part of it was they talked about the areas of Philadelphia where my family had lived. And so they had these little groups and there was quite a variety of things. And so I do get irritated with people that will say, well, I'm not going there because I don't have anybody in that place. Or, you know, another one, Sharon Hodges, who's been a guest here, and I went to a National Genealogical Society's conference where Barbara Vines Little spoke on tax records in Virginia. Well, neither of us have Virginia ancestors, but we wanted to learn about tax records.
Well, they're going to be similar in different...
Well, they are.
The concept is the same.
You know, so we wanted to go and learn in general about them, and then we went back to New Jersey, where our families are, and found they're almost non-existent. So, but any conferences that you can get, or the other thing is, if I can't get to a conference, I try and get a copy of the syllabus. Because although it's not the whole program, you've got the basic concept, and you often get bibliographies, which are good resources
and it's somebody
to go and
turn to if you know they've done. Well, and a lot of the genealogy lectures that I've gone to were absolutely nothing to do with my genealogy. But it helped me to learn about history or something else.
Yes.
It was just fascinating to hear how things were done or happened in a different country. Well, of course, most of my research is overseas anyway, but in different countries, and we had a guest here that was from Ethiopia. Well, obviously I have no relatives from there, but just to learn how the people there lived and kept their own family information was fascinating.
Well, and of course, one of the other things with teaching, I'm always looking for, so I have the knowledge to answer people's questions too.
How do you do this Indian stuff or something? That's not something that we're in tune to here.
Right. And if you can't get to conferences, read. There are books, there are magazines, there's so much online that you can take.
I think one of the most important ones is just joining a genealogy society, because you have, whether it's Mount Vernon, which you belong to now, or wherever anybody is, they always have lectures on different topics.
Yes.
And I don't know, I can't remember whether Mount Vernon does it, but Jewish Genealogy of Greater Washington, they always say that somebody finds something new, or do you want to say something, or particularly new members, what areas are you researching? Yeah. You might find in a lecture that somebody just gets up and says, I just found out so-and-so, and that's something that'll help you. So it might be in a different country, it might be in a different state, but just the concept of what they're talking about will help you.
Yes. So, and then, of course, one of the things that we've touched on is using computers. People often ask me, what genealogy program is best for me? Well, not everybody is going to be happy with one program. So as an individual, you have to go out and evaluate the programs and find what works best for you.
What I would like to see at a conference and haven't seen is this computer is set up with this one and this one is set up with, that would be a good idea, and then you can get an idea, because you don't want to spend a couple of $100 and find it doesn't help you.
What we used to have in this area was Hearthstone Bookstore, where Stuart had all the programs set up. In fact, all three times, well, no, two of the times that I bought a program, I went down and he let me play on, he gave me an overview of the program. Then he let me sit there and play with the sample copy. But
you're sort of, depending on what you do with the program, I'm sort of locked into Roots Magic at this point, because I used Personal Ancestral File, which was put out by the Mormon Church originally. Yes. And when they stopped supporting it, on this show I asked, and you found out, to use Roots Magic, because I've got all of these pictures. And although they say the material is transferable to another program, that's just the basic. The GEDCOM file is the basic, what do you call it, vital statistics. But not all the pictures. And I've got thousands of pictures on there.
Yeah, that's why I keep mine separately. but the other thing is using the other resources on a computer, doing internet searches and using Word documents, and you use Excel, and any of the other programs that can help to enhance your genealogical research. It's not just a computer program, because they don't all make everybody happy, but it's amazing the things that I have found. Used to be, when I needed a legal term, I pulled Black's Law Dictionary off my bookshelf. Now I type it into an internet search, whatever one you prefer. And usually you get not only Black's, but if there are other law dictionaries, you get that. You get all kinds of things that you can find. Now, not everything you're going to find. Well, and I've had people say to me in the past, well, I don't want to put my information on a membership list because I don't want people to find out about me. And I've said to a number of them, I said, did you ever Google yourself? Oh, there's nothing for me out there or about me out there. I said, oh yeah, go home and do it. I was quite surprised. I forget why I Googled myself. And I had been a member of a church back in the 1990s, was very involved in and lots of things that we did back then popped my name attached to it.
Now, there's a lot of specific programs for genealogy on the internet, not a program that you use, but that like Cindy's List,
Yes.
just links you to other places.
Yes.
One that that I always recommend is Stephen Moore's.
Yes.
Because he makes searching in other locations easier.
Yes.
I mean, when I do a class, I have like 2 pages of web pages that you can look at. It's overwhelming.
Yeah.
But things like Ancestry and Family Search are Family Search is very difficult for me to use these days. But it's because it's
They're
just,
changing things.
it's got so much on it.
Yeah.
But for years, and many of my documents came from using Family Search because they've got the original documents.
And that's number 12 is using the internet and going beyond the genealogy. Yes, we use Ancestry and Family Search, and Stephen Morris has certainly been really helpful. And of course, one of my favorites is Cindy's List because I say it's the link or the bridge to almost any genealogy topic that you can think of. You know, I often find with Cindy's List, I get on the computer and it takes me down the path, and then I look at the clock and it's 2 o'clock in the morning, 3 o'clock in the morning, and it's like, what did I start out looking at because it has so much? I've only found one topic that I could not find anything on that topic on Cindy's List. Back about 15 years ago, the Fairfax Conference had a program on colonial New England research. And I was on the board at the time, and we looked at the evaluations. And one of the questions was, did you attend the various sessions? And if not, why? And the colonial research track, the answer was, I don't have colonial New England ancestors. I need it in these states or this area. So a couple of years later, I decided I'll do colonial research in the mid-Atlantic states. At that time, the only state I hadn't touched on was New York. So I had done Pennsylvania, New Jersey, Maryland, Delaware research. So I went to Cindy's List because that's my starting point if I really don't know a whole lot about a topic. And I put colonial research in the mid-Atlantic states, and I tried a number of other ways. Nothing came up, so I had to start from scratch with that. But otherwise, I'll warn everybody, you're going to find so much that you're going to just keep going and going until you finally decide, I've got to stop. I've got to get up in the morning.
This leads to one problem that I've done. People have said to me, I don't need a genealogy society. I can find everything on the web. Everything is not on the web. And that's something that it's very difficult to explain to people as long as they think they're finding everything. They're finding a lot of stuff.
And of course, the other thing I recommend is whatever your favorite search engine is, and there are a lot of them out there. You know, use them too. Put your topics in, or if you're looking for information about a specific area, a specific time period, things like that. I was trying to check someone's work for a course they were taking that I was one of the graders for. And it was a small town I had never heard of out in Western Maryland. Well, I had never heard of it because it doesn't exist today. But it was founded in like 1846 or 1848. And I found quite a bit of historical information, and all I did was did an internet search for it.
Yeah.
So, and then the next thing that we really want to do is evaluating our information. You know, we have information, but can we trust it? You mentioned the vital record that
I have 3 records of my birth. One is the city records. One is the hospital record. And one is the health department. And the health department, which I don't think will count for the official one, if you want to get like a passport, that's the only one that's correct.
Correct.
The others spell my name wrong. Now, as somebody doing research 100 years from now sees two with my name spelled A-R-L-E-N-E, and will think, oh, and yet if they know I spelled it A-R-L-I-N-E, oh, that was an affectation that I was just trying to do. But that's the, but the one has it I-N-E, and that's what my parents spelled it in.
So there's something called the genealogical proof standard, and particularly people who are beginners say, well, I don't need that. That's something for professionals. And I kind of thought that initially myself too, but it really is a reliable way of evaluating things. You conduct an exhaustive research looking for everything that you can find that's going to help solve the problem, and you include an accurate source citation so you can go back to it. And then you analyze the information, you collate it so that you can assess the value or the quality of it, and then you resolve conflicts in the evidence, and then you arrive at a soundly coherent written understanding. Now
I've got a question for you. Okay, I've got a newspaper article. I've got at least 2 or 3 books that quote that newspaper article. I've got an encyclopedia that
quotes that article.
Would you believe the material?
No, because it's a newspaper, and
the newspaper article in the beginning says this, before the article begins, this is the true story as told by the hero himself, reported by.
But
it wasn't.
we know people tell stories. I mean, in doing this, I tell people, start out with a simple problem. Don't get a complicated. Use it for something simple that you may already know for sure which record is going to be correct. But when you're getting into things like when my grandmother lied about everything, including we had multiple places where she and other people said she was born between New Jersey and New York. And so I analyzed all the documents created by her and for her. I looked at all 5 of her siblings and where they were born, and I concluded that she was not born in New York. She was born in Hoboken, New Jersey. When I got done writing this up, it was almost 38 pages. So this was a real involved project. It doesn't have to be that involved. But, and number 14 of my shortcuts is evaluating the evidence. You should look at each fact in a document and evaluate. Do you think that it is accurate, and go through? And, sometimes it's a guessing game. I killed off my second great-grandparents because after the 1870 census, I found no records of them. Well, it turned out they were in a different place. They lived another 11 and 12 years. But at the time, the documents that I had, that was the conclusion that I could draw.
The same thing happened in, relative to that article. The man had a lot of kids, and after a while, one of them, the person was doing the research, the name didn't appear. Well, it turned out he'd converted. Well, as far as the Jewish end was concerned, he was dead. So you find it no Jewish reference at all to him, but he found a baptismal record of him later
of course,
on.
one of the other problems was they evidently separated, because I found her living in one town and him living in another. two places they had never had any connection to. So
yeah, that's. I'm sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt your story.
No,
But
you know,
I think we're pretty close to
the
being
end.
finished.
So the last thing is write yourself a report. You know, whatever you need to. Usually when I write a report, I start out with what I was looking for and what I knew, and then I look at what did I find. And when I'm done, I write out my conclusion. With a report, you're not remembering or trying to remember, what did I do 5 years ago? Why did I decide this? It includes everything that I looked at, so I know. Okay, what happened with me was I contacted a cemetery. I looked into her father and mother, found they owned lots in a cemetery. And I contacted the cemetery, and I found out she was buried in the cemetery, as was a couple of their children.
But he wasn't.
But he wasn't. But that, you know, that in fact told me, okay, she's still living. So I went to sources, and of course some of it was after we had things online that I didn't have 5 years before when I was doing the research. If I had had the censuses online when I did the original,
so much,
I would have found him. I would have found her.
There's so much more available to us that,
Yes.
that people doing research
Yes.
when we started was not
that
available.
we often have to go back and reevaluate it. So I know we're getting short of time, so we do want to thank the Mount Vernon Genealogical Society, who sponsors us. They are not currently meeting because of COVID. They are meeting on Zoom and hoping to be back in the Senior Center and have their library open by the end of September. We're keeping our fingers crossed, but
not going to happen.
but you know, invite you to go to their website and look at things there, and you can register if you're not a member, so you get the email and join them by Zoom. So, and I also want to thank you, Arline, for coming in to interview me.
Yeah, it's been fun. You know, it's been a long time.
Yes.
It's been fun again. But thank you. I'll say thank you to, because I think I learned a lot. I think we covered a lot. Again, for those who just listened to this session, this is sort of a two-part thing.
So go back and listen to part one if you haven't.
And a lot of good hints on what you want to do.